If a teacher notices a student is acting very different.
And what about parents? How can they best support their teenagers?
Child says, "Oh, I went to that party that you let me go to, and I saw one of my friends smoking." And the first reaction as a parent is like,
What are some of the barriers or the biggest barriers preventing students or teenagers getting the help they need when it comes to mental health?
when you're able to say, "Hey, something's wrong with my friend."
Welcome to Session and Secrets. And in this episode, we are delving into the challenges that students face. And we're here with our guest.
Martha Gonzalez.
And tell us about you, Martha.
Well, I've been working with children and families for over 25 years. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist here in California. I've been providing services to high school students for over 20 years as well. So I have quite a bit of experience.
Yes. And so today you are in session with me and with Martha. And so, Martha, we were talking about how students face many challenges. And there is an increase in cases of depression, cases of anxiety. And can you tell me more about that?
Yes, definitely. Since COVID, I think we've seen a rise in anxiety. Students they worry, they have lots of pressures of, meeting expectations, they're hard on themselves. They worry about doing well academically, if they're in sports, keeping up with peers, social media. There's just so many things going on, and there's just a lot of pressure for them.
Yes, and sometimes we forget, right? Because we just think like, oh, high school, it's about grades,
Having
about home,
fun.
and having fun and homework, and we forget like that. We forget that students or adolescents are going through lots of transitions, and
Yes.
that they also carry emotional loads that may go unseen. And I think sometimes someone like you is the first, is at the first front, or you're one of the first people that detected.
Yes.
And yeah, so what is the role of school counselors?
So as a school counselor, you have a lot of, roles and yes,
Responsibilities.
lots of responsibilities, definitely. But one of the responsibilities is, making sure we're supporting our students in their, mental health and whatnot. We also support them with their academics. If they have IEPs, 504 plans, participating in parent teacher conferences, just being that middle person for a lot of things that might come up for our students, because a lot of times we're their voice, because a lot of times they don't have the words to connect with what they're feeling. So then we have to, sit down with them and kind of get a feel for what's going on. And sometimes they don't feel like they want to talk to the person who they're having
Yes.
that challenge with. And then that's where, we come in. If they're okay with it, then we'll be the middle person. Like maybe sometimes they need us to check in with parent or with the teacher or whatnot, or, just challenges like that. And then we are their safe space.
Yes. And sometimes it's really it can be a tough population to work with, right?
Yes.
Adolescents,
Yes.
especially high school students. And what are some of the changes that parents or caregivers can be on the lookout to see if their teen is struggling with mental health issues?
Yes, it's a tricky question, but for parents and teachers, like, just if you notice any changes, like, for example, if you have a child that was always happy and outgoing and always, turning in their work on time and doing what they need to do, and all of a sudden, they're withdrawal, they're not participating as much. Maybe they're showing up to school late. Maybe they're absent a lot. Maybe they seem withdrawn. And I think it's important that for those that are around the students, to make sure that they're talking to someone about what they're noticing. If a teacher notices a student is acting very different, making sure that they check in with the student, and if the student doesn't want to talk to them and says, "Oh, everything's fine," just trusting that gut instinct, and making sure that they check in with someone, that they check in with the counselor. I noticed, Johnny's not doing his work anymore. And, this is one of my A students. And now they're not turning anything in. They're constantly absent. When they're in class, they seem very tired. And that's information that then the counselor can, use for when they meet with the student and kind of assess the situation and see what's going on.
Have you seen, once you, if you do that and you bring a student in to talk to them about the changes, do you find resistance? Like, do they say everything's okay, or are they attuned to, like, yeah, there's something going on, or do you have to tease it in for them and like help it figure it out?
Well, it's hit or miss, because some
Uh-huh.
kids, they were just waiting for someone to talk to them and ask them
Yes.
about what's going on. So they're, eager to share because they want to get help. And then there's the students that are maybe not sure if they can trust adults. So
Right.
then it takes a little while for them to warm up. But with those type of students, well, what I'll say when they tell me everything's fine, nothing's wrong, I'll say, okay, well, can I check in with you tomorrow? Fine. And then I'll check in with them. And then eventually, as I start to check in, then they start to open up. And then as you start to build rapport with them, and they trust you, then they're more likely to be open to get help from you.
Yeah. And when do you let parents know that just is it in the moment that or are parents notified? If a student is struggling and a teacher notices changes in behaviors and they refer them to counseling, school counseling,
Mhm.
do you talk to the parents, or do you wait to see what comes out of this meetings?
Well, first, I check in with the student. And then if it's something that I can help them with, then I talk to them and I ask them, it'd be great, if we can get your parent involved. And they're part of that decision making. But normally, when they start to receive school based mental health from the licensed professionals on campus, parents are involved.
Oh, okay. And yeah, I was thinking when you were saying that sometimes students can't wait to talk about it, right? And you just ask them, and
Open.
they open right away. Yes,
Yes.
I've had clients. I've had teenage clients that the school counselor said, "Oh, tell me the most embarrassing, or tell me the worst experience from their English class, or what happened this summer." And my client maybe disclosed sexual abuse, right? That they were being sexually abused by a family member. And so I found it in the work I do. Sometimes like school counselors are, the first people that they talk
Yes.
to or that they open up to.
Yes.
Um and so it's a really important role in.
Oh, absolutely. Because we're like the kind of like the first responder,
Yes.
and then from there, we assess the situation. How can we be of support? Then we reach out to the other professionals on campus to see who's gonna be a good fit for the situation that the student has going on. And then if it's something that we can't take care of at school, then we try to see what's the next best resource. But we always make sure we connect them and link them with someone who can provide support and help.
Yes. And what about parents? How can they best support their teenagers, their high school students?
Well, I think a very important thing is for them to stay involved because I find that as kids get older, it's like, yes, your son is 6 feet tall, but he is 14. You
Right?
know, so a lot of times I feel that because they are bigger and taller
Taller.
and taller than us,
Right.
then a lot of times we think, oh, they're growing up, they're grown up, they don't need me as much. But during those years, I think is when they really need their parents, and I think that parent involvement and making that connection and just being curious about what they're doing, you know, allowing them to share with you, what's going on with them in a non-judgmental way. Like for example, like let's say the child says, "Oh, I went to that party that you let me go to, and I saw one of my friends smoking." And the first reaction as a parent is like, "I don't want my
Yeah.
daughter or son
Don't
hanging
talk to
out with."
him
No, yes,
anymore. Don't
that's
talk to
not a good
her.
friend.
Stay away.
So, it's scary in a way because you're like, maybe I don't want my child hanging out with, that person because they're doing stuff they're not supposed to be doing that are not that's not healthy. And but when the student says that, when the child says that and then the parent responds in a negative way, then the student is more likely,
To not trust,
to not
right?
trust them.
Again,
And sometimes
yes.
what we hear is hard, but it's important that we take a step back and maybe ask a question. Oh, well, what were your thoughts? What were your thoughts when you saw, your friend smoking? Oh, well, I didn't like it. It made me feel uncomfortable. And then that tells you where your child is. So I just think
Mhm.
that it's important that when they come and talk to us, we might not like what they're saying, but it's important information. And the only way we're going to keep receiving that information is if we're receptive to it and receive it in a way that is not judgmental and that they're feeling that it's safe. I can talk to you. Because if they don't feel that they can talk to you, they're not going to tell you anything.
Yes.
So I think it's important that our approach, we think
Yeah.
about our approach, and also thinking about intent. What is my intent with this conversation? Where do I want this to go? So if I want my team to trust me, I need to be approachable. I need to be, able to listen without judgment and also validate, what they're telling us. We might not like what they're saying, but it's important that they feel heard. And sometimes you might have to say, you know what? I'm going to have to get back to you on this. Because if it's something that's really heavy for a parent,
Difficult,
if
yeah.
it's a difficult topic for a parent, it's okay to say, you know what? I'm going to have to get back to you on this. Can we check back in tomorrow or the following day or what have you? Because you're modeling behavior. So if you're modeling behavior, it's like, okay, this is how we handle things. You know, it's okay to think about it and come back to it. So we're also modeling behavior for the team.
Yes.
So I think, parents are super important and they play a huge role. And even though they're in high school, we need you there, participating in the event. Sometimes, parents will say, oh, I don't want to come to the back to school night or the open house. They're seniors. It's like, well, this is the last year. Come join
Yes.
us, So I think it's important to stay involved, to the best of your ability, because I know parents work, even though they're in high school, because it's a challenging time for students and they need to feel supported even though they're older now.
Yes.
Yeah.
But sometimes students say like, "Oh, I don't want my parents to come see me play," or "I don't want my parents to come, to come to my game." What do you think
But
about that?
that's pretty normal. I know that when my son played sports, he's like, "Do you have to come?" "Yes, I do."
Yes.
And I'd say, "Okay, I won't sit in the front. I'll sit in the back." But, just making sure that they don't feel uncomfortable either, but just making sure that they know that you're there. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just the age. They
Yes.
just test you to see what you say,
Yes.
and, you
I,
know
I I agree with you. I always tell the parents,
uh-huh.
show up,
Yes, show
just
up
go,
anyways. Yes.
and then you'll see what happens, right?
Sometimes parents will say, "Well, they're not gonna talk to me." Talk to them when they get home. Tell them
Yes.
how great they did, but it's okay to show up. It's your child, it's okay to show up. It's okay for, parents to be present, even if they say, "No, don't go. I'm embarrassed, my friends." It's okay. Show up anyways.
And sometimes, like just not being judgmental with your children, it's
Yes.
hard. It's really
Yes. Yes.
we're both moms, right?
Yes.
And we know and we know the skills. And so at least I know the skills. I'm not sure, but I sometimes have a hard time keeping my opinions to myself.
And that's
I don't know if
hard.
you struggle with that, but I do. And so I have to walk through through the steps of like calm down, chill,
Mhm.
quiet, take a
Mhm.
deep breath,
Mhm.
and remind myself like I'm modeling, right?
Yes.
And if I want to hear more, I need to stay calm, right?
Yes.
Because if I start judging, uh, then um then maybe my daughter's not gonna continue trusting me.
Because that information is bringing awareness,
Yeah.
and if they didn't trust us, they wouldn't be coming to us. So if they're coming to us, it's because they know that we have something of value to offer, right? So that's why we have to make sure that we take a step back, and sometimes we're going to have to say, you know what, I'm going to have to get back to you on this one. I really appreciate you sharing. I think it's important that we talk and we communicate, but I'm going to need a little bit of time with this one. And it's okay. That's okay.
Yes. And so what are some of the barriers or the biggest barriers preventing students or teenagers getting the help they need when it comes to mental health?
I feel that a lot of times, the stigma, they don't want other people to find out. They'll tell me, I don't want them to know. They might think that I'm crazy or just, you
Like their
know,
family members, their
yes, like just
parents?
some of the irrational thoughts that come with, because just because you're going to counseling or therapy, that doesn't mean we're crazy,
Hmm.
So a lot of times it's they worry about the stigma, they worry about being judged, and a lot of times they also worry about being a burden. They'll tell me, well, my mom and dad work a lot, and if they have to take me to appointments, they worry about being a burden. And that's why it's great that schools are now offering mental health support on campus. So then that makes mental health more accessible for some students that maybe wouldn't have the transportation or the means financially to get these services. So,
Yeah, so they're also like caring, right? So they're caring for
yes,
the parents, and so
yes,
that's what they don't want to be a burden, or they see how their parents are
yes.
struggling. Mm.
And then they feel like this is going to be one more
One more
thing.
thing that they're gonna have to deal with.
Yes. So, it's hard, but it's important that they know that they matter and that there is help available. We just need to make sure that we talk to someone, a safe person, that we trust, that can connect us to the correct resources so that they can thrive and be successful.
And what do you think we can do to reduce the stigma of mental health?
I think that providing more awareness, just providing more awareness, making conversations about mental health more normal. You know, um, I feel that now a lot of schools are doing a great job at, incorporating different events during the week to help support mental health. Like I know some schools do like wellness Wednesdays and they'll do like something before school starts that students can participate in, to support their mental health. And that's great. I see a lot of kids actively participating in that. So that's nice to see. There's also mental health clubs on campus that's peer led, so then they're able to support each other. They get information, they're able to have an open conversation about it, open dialogue, and, it's a safe place because it's a peer, they're talking about it. So I think as it becomes more normal in conversations, I think some of that stigma starts to, you know,
And also as parents, right? We
disappear.
could we could model, like, if we are in therapy, sometimes adults
Yes.
don't wanna share that, or maybe parents, they're in
Mhm.
couples therapy, and they don't want the children to know that they're in couples therapy, and I
Yes.
think I think that that continues the stigma of mental health
Yes.
because it sends a message, the unspoken message that, "Oh, there's something
Yeah, we have
wrong
to
with it."
hide it.
Yes, we have to
There's
hide
something
it.
wrong, that's why we don't
Yes.
talk about it. Yeah, so I think it's important that as a family, there is, communication, you know, um, we're aiming for, connection, not perfection,
Yes. Oh,
so
I
I
love
think
that.
that's important.
Yeah, say it again.
We're aiming for connection, not perfection. Not sure where
Exactly.
I heard that, but I heard it somewhere,
Somewhere.
and I liked it.
Yes. I'm gonna steal it from you then.
Perfect.
And so, have you noticed a difference in how in a difference in how different boys and girls show their struggles with mental health?
Well, girls are more likely to come and talk to me, whereas with boys, it's a little bit more challenging. But, even though it's a little bit more challenging with the boys, I feel like they're more open to it nowadays. Now that,
Mhm.
uh, as a society, as we're becoming more open about mental health, I think that that's making it feel more safe,
Yeah.
like a safe thing to do. But boys are still a little bit. It takes me a little bit longer to get them to
You get the
buy
one
in.
one word answer.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, and I was reading something that said that we tend to show or be more attuned to say like we're depressed, we're
Mhm,
sad, we're anxious, or we're more open with
mhm,
how we're feeling,
mhm.
and then that boys show up as more like conduct or behavioral problems.
Yes. Yes, because a lot of times, if a student's acting up in class, I might be taken as, oh, they're just being defiant or disrespectful.
Yes.
But in reality, there might be more going on underneath the surface than what we can see. So
Yes.
I think that as teachers and educators and counselors in school, like, we need to also, look at that when that's happening.
Look beneath the surface
Yes,
and like, yeah.
definitely, definitely. So when sometimes when teachers reach out, they'll say, "Hey, so and so's been acting out in class," and then I'll check in with them and kind of see what's going on because for a lot of these kids, they deal with more than just school,
Yes.
you know.
Mhm.
Family life sometimes is challenging too. So not only do they have the stressors of, school, you know, um, their academics,
Yes. Social
um,
media now.
mentally, physically, and
Yes.
then family life. Sometimes family life is challenging too, and school is such an important place because that's where they spend the majority of their time. So they're at school the majority of the time. So it's important that we stay vigilant and aware when we start to notice that, something's not right and doesn't seem right. So, and making sure that we trust our instincts.
Yes, and their even their interactions with their peers, right? If
Yes.
they had a group of friends or they
Mm-hmm.
had a bestie and they broke up with the bestie and now they don't want to go to school, right?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
if there's like drama with other friends, now they get discouraged and maybe they don't want to go to school anymore.
You know what I've noticed that's been a nice, a nice, I don't know if it's a change or how would I describe it, but something that I've noticed like in the last several years is that students will come and share, like, I'm worried about my friend, So I think that you know,
Like
that takes a
there's
lot of courage, to come and say that, someone needs help, So because for some students, if that student wouldn't have reached out for them, maybe they wouldn't have gotten help
yes.
because they didn't, feel like they could speak up or they didn't feel like they could go talk to someone about it.
Yes, and so sometimes, yeah, friends have the awareness, right? Because maybe
Yes.
the child posted something on social media and
Yes.
blocked their family members, and so
Yes.
only friends can see that
Absolutely.
they're struggling with something. And so I think that yeah, even peers
Mhm.
they form such an important part of the
Absolutely.
development.
Yes. But I think that that's being a good friend, when you're able to say, "Hey, something's wrong with my friend," and making sure you seek out a trusted adult, to look into the situation to make sure that that person is safe.
And like how do you guide students to once you've identified okay
Mhm.
this student is struggling with maybe depression or with anxiety, how do you guide them to be open to receive help?
Well, first, it's a conversation. You kind of just check in with them, see what's going on. Um, if they're resistant to it, it's much more challenging, because you got to have buy-in from the student, but if they're open to them, you just if they're open to the services, you let them know, this is what we offer here. We have, our mental health specialists, we have social workers on campus that can provide services. They offer group counseling, they offer individual. So it's just kind of just matching them up with what would be the best resource and explaining to them what happens in there. Because so then that way when they go into their counseling sessions, they know what they're walking into. Because for them, it would be their first experience with receiving mental health services.
A- and what is like the one wish or the one thing you wish parents did more of to support their
Just
teenagers mental health?
staying connected and communication. That is just so important. Staying connected with the school, making sure you're communicating with the school, making sure you're attending the events that they're having, staying involved with their, academics, even as they're getting older, staying involved because you can learn a lot from how your child is doing, not just from their grades, because there's students that have straight A's and have other
And they are
challenges.
struggling emotionally,
Yes.
yes.
Yes. So just staying involved, talking to their teachers. How's my son or daughter doing in your class? Oh, they have an A. Okay, well, how are they doing socially? Are they participating? Do they have do they participate in group projects? Do they have friends? Because you'd be surprised what you would learn about your child, with being involved. And if they see you involved, they see you, you're a presence. If you're involved, it matters.
Yes, it does make a
So,
difference, right?
yes.
And so, what are some of the secrets that you've heard from some of your students?
Secrets. I would say mainly it's about maybe college, when it gets to senior year and maybe parents have different plans for them for career choices.
Right.
And, the students' career choices and the parents aren't necessarily
Not
aligned.
matching, yeah.
They're not matching. So that's where, sometimes they'll tell me, well, I applied to this school, but I applied to this program. But my parents want me to do this. So a lot of times it's hard because like what they want to pursue academically might not be what the parents want for them. But then we also have a conversation about that. Okay, so then if you get accepted, what is that going to look like? What is that conversation going to look like with your family?
Right.
Because we're going to have a conversation about it,
Yes.
So then they start to like plan, okay, I'm going to say this. And then they start to like practice how they're going to approach the situation. But that's hard also,
Yes.
because we can plan for our children because we want what's best for them.
Because we think that's
Yes.
going to be the best for them.
Yes.
Yes.
But their plans might be different.
Yes, exactly. Or their dreams, right? Their dreams
Yes.
and hopes may not align with ours.
Yes. They might be totally different,
Yes.
So I just think that staying open and, listening.
And listening and be there, right?
Yeah, and staying connected.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Martha,
you.
is there anything else you want to share with us?
No, just very honored and happy to be in the space. Thank you so much for sharing your platform with me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Shh. Subscribe.